Hey everyone, this is Kim O'Neill from the Every Day's a New Day podcast and live show, and you're listening to the Going North podcast with the hilarious Dom Brightman. Be sure to subscribe to his show so you don't miss any episodes, and remember, every day is always a new day.
And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors known as G&P, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, it's the Going North podcast. And we got another super special, awesome human for you today because we got one heck of a lovely lady who is an award-winning author, y'all. That's right indeed. Gold medals all day, baby. That's right, because she's a Colorado native who has spent her career working as a nurse in the main operating rooms of several suburban hospitals and a major children's hospital in the Denver area, y'all. That's right. Go Broncos, except for 2012. And she translated her experience and knowledge of the OR nursing into working as a clinical editor for an OR nursing journal, where she helped journalists and English majors understand the intricacies of surgery while they helped her to understand the AMA style book. So let's give it up for Miss H.S. herself, the heavenly and stupendous Helen Starbuck. How you doing today, Helen?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Oh, doing good in all the neighborhoods. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Say hello to all the neighbors via reading.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness, yes indeed. So my goodness, like with all introductions, I'm not allowed to be, I'd say, let's give it a good 87 days long. And I'm pretty sure I forgot a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm pretty sure at the age of 12, you probably didn't see yourself where you are today. So mind filling in any cavities I may have missed about you, Helen?
Well, at the age of 12, I read a lot, mostly because books were far more interesting than my life was. And then as a young teenager, I started writing, and I was the only one in my family who did that, and was apparently the only one in my family that really read a lot for pleasure. So I've been writing for quite a while, but it was mostly a hobby. And I had sort of a circuitous route to becoming a published author. I went to school for a while as an art major and then discovered that I liked to eat too much to try to be a professional artist because I couldn't support myself doing that. And I came from a family that had several nurses in it. And so I thought, well, there'll always be sick people. And so I would always have a job. So I transferred into a nursing program and really enjoyed it. It's a fascinating profession. I knew in nursing school that my favorite area was the operating room. At the time, there was sort of a catch-22 to get into the OR. They would tell you that they wouldn't hire you into the OR unless you had experience. And at the time, the only way to get experience was to work in the OR. So I worked in pediatrics for a while. And then the director of nursing called me one day and said, are you still interested in working in the OR? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, we had 9 people quit. Now, as an older, more experienced human being, if I heard that, it would be like, okay, why did all these people quit at once? But I was so anxious to get in the OR. I said, I'll do it. And so that's how I finally was able to work in the OR, and I loved it. The first year was tough because there's so much you have to learn. But I used to cry every morning in the shower before I went to work. And then I'd get to work and it'd be a good day. And I'd come home and think, okay, I can do this. So that's where I spent the majority of my career. And then I was offered a job after publishing an article in the nursing journal I eventually worked for, the managing director offered me the position of clinical editor. So I was the only nurse, operating room nurse on staff. Everybody else were journalists or English majors. And so I was there to, look at pictures and say, well, no, you've got this x-ray backwards, or, explain to them what the photo was about and make sure that the articles were clinically correct. And then one of my other fun parts about that job was working with nurses who wanted to get published and had submitted an article to the editorial board. And for whatever reason, the editorial board decided to reject it. So they started sending those authors to me to help them get their article into shape to where the editorial board would accept it. And that was a lot of fun. So that kind of brought back the writing bug. It had always kind of been there, but I also tell people that, I got a new job, got a husband, eventually got a daughter. So everything kind of went on the shelf until I moved house in, I think it was 2015. And I was going through things, throwing stuff out and trying to decide what was worth moving. This was post-divorce, so life was kind of shook up. Anyway, I came across the first 4 chapters of a book that I had started when I was working in the OR. The idea for it came from a patient that I helped take care of that had very puzzling neurological symptoms that continued to get worse. And at the time, the case fascinated me because it took the docs quite a while to figure out what was going on, because the likely suspect of what was going on just seemed so implausible. And I thought at the time, wow, this would make a great story. So anyway, in 2015, I found the first 4 chapters that I'd started on that. And I thought, I still like this. So I thought, well, I'm going to see where it goes. And eventually it turned into a full-fledged novel, a mystery. And I found a wonderful editor that I worked with who really helped me clean it up, tighten it up, turn it into the first book that won an award, the National Indie Excellence Award for mystery, and ended up being a quarterfinalist in the Book Life Prize contest. So I have used her for all 3 of the books in the mystery series, and the 3rd book in the series was a finalist for mystery in the National Indie Excellence Awards, and it got a starred review from Kirkus, which they only give to about 2% of indie authors. So I was really thrilled. So that's kind of how I ended up becoming a published author. It was sort of a wandering route.
Oh, yeah, that's right indeed. And wandering indeed. And if I'm not mistaken, you wandered so much you didn't you actually apply for one of the awards and you actually earned it when you forgot about it?
I did. The National Indie Excellence Award. Well, I had submitted my first book in this mystery series to, I don't know, 4 or 5 different contests. And then, it takes them weeks, sometimes months before you actually hear whether you won anything. And so I put this little list aside and figured, well, I'll hear about it eventually. And several months later, I got an email from, I think it was Writer's Digest, and they said, thank you so much for submitting your book. We were just overwhelmed with submissions, and so you didn't win anything, but please, resubmit another book later. So I thought, my first thought was, I don't remember entering this contest. And so I thought, okay, well, you need to find that piece of paper and figure out where things are at. And I hadn't heard from the National Indie Excellence Award that I entered. And according to the information I had, I should have heard probably a month, 6 weeks before. And I thought, okay, well, you didn't win anything. But I went on their website and looked, and there was my book under the mystery category. And I thought, okay, I don't know what this means. I mean, I didn't get anything from them. So I emailed the woman that I'd been in contact with when I first submitted the book. And she goes, oh my gosh, yes, you won. She said, you didn't get the email? And I said, no. I said, I've checked my spam folder. And she goes, oh, I am so sorry. And I said, well, the only thing I can think is you probably sent it. It got put in the spam folder. And my email provider deletes spam after 30 days. So I probably missed it. But I was like, oh my God, I would never have known that I won this award had I not been told I hadn't won by the other bunch. So yeah, I have learned to keep track of what I do and keep it on my desktop so I can periodically remind myself.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yep, kind of reminds me of that good old sticky notes app. Good times, definitely good times indeed.
Yep.
That's right. Having sticky notes everywhere in the computer, on the computer, around the computer, around the house.
Yep.
That's right. Reminders everywhere. So, so my goodness, congratulations on all those awards and more to come. Because I'm sure that your future books you're going to submit for the possibility of getting some gold.
Yeah, well, you never know. I haven't made the USA Today or New York Times bestseller list, but we all have dreams, so we'll see.
There we go, indeed. So my goodness, so finding those 4 chapters and eventually making it a book, and then eventually making series of books, like my goodness, like is there any plans to explore any other genres of writing?
Um, I really enjoy both reading and writing mystery and suspense. I like literary fiction. I like some thrillers. I like a bunch of different genres, but as to writing it, I think I'll probably stick with the mystery suspense. That I years and years ago, I submitted a story to Harlequin Romance, which I guess is still in business, thinking it would be a romance. And they sent it back and they said, we really liked your book, but it's more mystery than it is romance. So we're going to pass on it. And I think that was my clue that I should stick to what I do well.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But that doesn't stop you from adding the romance to the books, I hear.
Well, that's true. I mean, there's always a little thread of romance through my books. Um, Somebody asked me recently, do you feel like your books have to have that? And I don't feel like they have to have it, but I feel like it's part of life and it's part of what I like to read. So there's always a subplot of a romance in there between the main characters or someone. So it's the books I enjoy most have, not all of them, but have that going for them. I think it adds a little flavor to the story.
There you go. There you go, indeed. That's right, indeed. Adding some Old Bay and seasoning salt to the salt and pepper. You love to see
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
That's right, indeed. So my goodness, staying in the lane and producing all these wonderful books. So do you still consider yourself a hybrid of a pantser and an organizer?
Well, I am probably more pantser than anything else. If I'm writing a professional article, I can outline with the best of them because there's a starting point and an ending point, and things have to go in a certain direction. But for fiction, I can't outline. I'm actually in some ways envious of authors that can, because I think they can write faster. But that just doesn't work for me. I have rogue characters. They kind of, I often think that there's a parallel universe where my characters live, because they will often take off in directions that I wasn't expecting or really thinking of going. And then it turns out to be a really good deal. I had have a character in my mystery series the detective who isn't the main character in the story. And I assumed he'd be a one-off character. And he pretty much decided, no, he was sticking for the whole series and he was going to become a more and more important character. And as it turns out, a lot of the people who like my books have often said, oh, I just love Frost. Can you tell us more about him? So writing that way, things go off in directions you weren't counting on. And sometimes you get stuck because you write yourself into a corner that you can't quite figure out how to get out of. And the one thing I have found, I think pantsing in some way is a lot more work, because eventually I will often have to sit down and create a timeline so I can just keep straight in my own head where things are going, where they've been, what took place when, so that I don't start talking about things and there are people going, wait, what? So it requires a lot of revising. And in part, that's also why I love having beta readers, people that you can send your work in progress, or your first draft or whatever, to, who will read it and give you feedback about it and let you know whether it's going well, whether it makes sense, or whether you've gotten way off track. And that's also, I've heard some authors say, I don't use an editor, I just edit my own book. And one of the fears they voice is that they fear that the editor will change their story or change the way they told it. And working as a developmental editor, now admittedly it was for nursing articles, but also having a lot to do with editors over the course of getting these books published, no good editor is going to do that. They are going to point out things that work, things that don't work, things that would be good if you develop them. They're not going to radically change your story. They're going to help you improve it. I remember my editor on the third book in the series, when I first sent it to her, she got back to me a few weeks later and she said, I kept reading the first few chapters thinking, when's the story going to start? And then she said, I got to chapter 4 and I thought, this is where the story starts. And she said, so really all of this stuff before that, she said, I don't think is helping. She said, I think it's distracting. And she said, this is where the story starts. And my suggestion would be get rid of all this other stuff and start the story there. Well, I'd worked with her long enough to trust her enough to know that she probably was right. And she was. And it was funny because the end of that book, one of my beta readers who I've known for a long time called me up and said, how much does our friendship depend on what I tell you? I said, well, it doesn't. That's why I send these to you. She goes, I hate the ending. She said, I hate it so much that if I didn't know you, I would probably never read another one of your books. And I was like, oh, what did I do? And so we spent about an hour or so on the phone talking about what she didn't like and why she didn't like it, and how she thought it just wasn't in character with the main character. And so I thought she had a lot of really good points. And I talked to my editor and told her what she'd said. And she said, keep her around because I don't like the ending either. And it was like, okay. All right. So I have two people I really trust and they don't like the ending. So the ending's going to get changed. And it did. It changed quite a bit. And I think it's in part what made it a much better book and got me the starred Kirkus reviews. So, I think authors, especially indie authors, traditionally published authors, don't really have a choice. The publishing companies are going to edit whether you want them to or not. But I do think with indie authors have a choice. And I think not working with an editor is a really bad choice. Because we're just too close to what we write to see the flaws. But everybody has to make their own decisions. I feel very strongly about beta readers and editors because I think they're worth their weight in gold.
I definitely could say that again. I had a couple of past guests that said have similar thoughts about beta readers because it's really gold. It's so true. It's like, hey, you're sure to put this out into the public and being able to have those trusted beta readers, heck, even editors, like it's actually kind of interesting for those folks who want to edit their own book and without having a professional editor look at it because it's like, because there's more than one editor out there, y'all. There's multiple editors out there.
Oh yeah, there are a ton. And most editors will have you send them a certain number of pages, depends with each editor, and they will read it and edit those pages for free and send them back to you to see if you're a good fit as a team. And like you said, there are tons of editors out there. So you might have to, quote, interview several, but you will eventually find one that you really like. And, you have to look for people that like your genre and have lots of experience editing it because, for example, somebody that loves science fiction and that's all they read and that's what they edit may not be the right person for a romance novel or a mystery. So that's a consideration too, and you got to find the right fit, but there's somebody out there.
Heck yeah, definitely say that again. Indeed, it's like, hey, it's like, why do you have 3 chapters talking about one single chair and all of its wonderful amenities and how it's designed, and then you get to the story in chapter 4, like, no, stop it.
Well, exactly, and we really are too close to what we write to be objective about it. And, I think it's, what's the saying, kill your darlings. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you have to kill something that you just thought was wonderful and nobody likes it. So I always tell people what I do with those things is I don't just delete them and get rid of them. I cut them and I paste them into a new document and I save it in a file that I had that says bits and pieces. And I have been surprised at the number of those that eventually on a book I'm working on, I'll think that's where that belongs. And I go back and I get it and I weave it into another story where it fits really well, whereas it did not fit with the previous story at all. So it's not like you lose that stuff. You don't have to, you can keep it. You just have to, if enough people tell you it doesn't work, then I believe you need to listen to that and take it out. Or you're going to have, once it gets up, published and up on Amazon or wherever you sell your books, readers are going to tell you that. They're going to give you bad reviews or they're not going to buy your book. So I think in the long run, it pays to listen.
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does. It does pay to listen, indeed. That's right, indeed. You also have to consider the source of who is actually giving you that
Yes,
feedback too. That's right, indeed. Because
yes.
you only took the advice from trusted advisors. That's the major thing folks have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and I know some people get really upset if they get a, less than 5-star review on their book. But I've talked to several people and said, well, I don't let it get to me because not everybody is going to like what you write. It just may not be their cup of tea. It doesn't mean that what you've written is bad. It's just not something that appeals to them. But getting a lot of reviews that say the same thing, then you need to listen. Some people leave nasty reviews just because they're nasty people. I guess is the easiest way to say it. But a lot of people that review books are very careful, thoughtful readers. And so if you have 3 or 4 reviews where they say, this didn't work, or I didn't like this, or whatever, then I think it bears stepping back and taking a look at it and seeing if it was just these folks and it wasn't their cup of tea, or is there really something that needs to change? I don't think you should, every time you get a bad review, go back and revise everything, because that would be silly. But I think that, if you've got several reviews that say, boy, the middle just dragged, and you start seeing more of this, then it's like, okay, well, maybe the middle really dragged. Maybe I need to take a look at that next time around and make sure the middle doesn't drag. So I don't think bad reviews are necessarily all bad.
Yeah, that's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Because if you keep hearing it, then it must be true. Maybe. That's right. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, with these wonderful books that you've produced and folks have edited and read, especially the beta readers, I hear you do a lot of wonderful research into putting these books together to make sure that you're historically accurate if there's any history mentioned, or heck, even with some things like guns and things like that. So, what's probably been your favorite research experience in preparation for one of your books?
Well, obviously my mysteries involve police. So there were a lot of things that I needed to research, because obviously I'm not a policeman. One really fun thing I did, because I wanted to know I'm not a gun person. I've never had guns, had never shot them. And I wanted to know what it felt like, what a gun felt like, how you loaded it, what it felt like when you shot it. So at this shooting range across town from my house, they offered a pistols for ladies class. And I thought, well, that might be kind of fun. So I went, and it was a blast. I mean, the woman that taught it, she went through all types of handguns, explained the difference, explained what they did, explained the damage they cause. And then the last day we did it, we got to go into the shooting range and actually shoot the guns. And it was really fascinating, and it was a lot of fun. And it turns out I'm kind of a dead eye when it comes to shooting targets. And she laughed and she said, well, I have found that women are actually pretty good shots, even if they've never shot a gun. So I always tell people, be careful, watch those women. But it was a lot of fun. And talking to a homicide detective was quite the experience. I discovered that they're very, very literal and very linear, in the sense that if this happens, then this has to happen, then this has to happen. There's no real wandering off in the weeds. And I was talking to the detective that I connected with, and said to him, okay, well, so I want to have this inmate from prison injured badly in prison enough that he has to be taken to a nearby hospital for surgery. So I wondered what the security would be when he was admitted to his room. He said, well, there'd be a cop outside the door and there'd be a cop in the room. And I said, well, I'm trying to make it easier for this guy to escape. And he goes, well, there'd be a cop outside the door and there'd be a cop in the room. And I said, but what about, and he goes, no, there'd be a cop outside the door and there'd be a cop in the room. So I was like, okay, fine. There'll be a cop outside the door and there'll be a cop in the room. Now I just have to figure out how to get this guy out of here. And so that's been a lot of fun. And, I met a lawyer recently who she has done all kinds of things. She's worked as a prosecutor, she's worked for the government, she's worked as a defense attorney, and she currently is working with people with mental health issues that are having legal issues. And she was fascinating. I mean, she walked me through what happens from the time of arrest through to arraignment and the bond hearing and getting bail or not getting bail. And it was great. And the nice thing is they've all been very wonderful about letting me email them, go, okay, I have a question about this. I try not to bug them too much, but, and I guess the other thing research wise that was, and continues to be a lot of fun is there's a conference called the Writers Police Academy. And writers can go to this. And it's a 3-day conference where law enforcement and associated folks come and give all sorts of seminars. And so you have people from the FBI, the DEA, the CIA, regular police departments, and there are all sorts of topics. And I just had a ball. It was so much fun. And you learn so many bizarre things, and it's just great. So I guess those are the highlights of my research experiences.
Solid research indeed. So, were you already an established author before going about the research, or have you not published your first book yet when you started it with some of those activities?
I had talked to the homicide detective while I was writing the first book, because I had questions about procedure and that kind of thing. I did not connect with the lawyer until much later, and I actually wish I had, because I think my first book would have been a little more legally accurate. It's not totally off, but there were a few little things that probably would not have happened in real life. So, but I began to realize once that book was done that it takes a village, which is, kind of trite, but it is true. When you don't know something, you need to find somebody who does. I mean, for example, I've worked in the operating room my whole professional career. And so I can get that part of it spot on. I have a friend who was an ER nurse for a very long time. And I ran a couple scenes by her in one of my standalone books. And she sent me a 3-page email back and she said, okay, so here are some comments about what happens in the ER and what would happen at an accident scene. And she was really helpful. So you can't, I also tapped into for the third book, tapped into an ER doc that I know and sent him a couple of pages that took place in the ER. And he said, well, it's really dramatic, but we probably wouldn't do it that way. And it's like, okay, tell me how you do it. So you can be accurate and still be dramatic and still be entertaining. But people who are experts in those fields aren't going to read your book and go, oh, this is such a mess. I don't want people reacting to my books the way I always reacted to that television show House. I love Hugh Laurie, but I hated that show because it was so inaccurate, both in the ER or the OR and the way he behaved within a hospital. A real life doc would never get away with the nonsense he pulled. And I was watching it one night with my daughter, and I kept saying, oh, that would never happen. And she turned to me and she said, Mom, it's a TV show. If you can't sit here and watch it without constantly calling, you need to go upstairs and leave me alone because I like the show. And I was like, okay, then, I just don't want cops or lawyers or whoever reading my book going, well, this just isn't, because I think not every reader is going to be that discerning, but I think as a writer, you owe it to your readers to be as accurate as possible with the technical side of it. You can take all sorts of literary license with things, but I think there has to be a basis in accuracy.
No wonder they say the truth is stranger than fiction.
It can be. It very much can be. That's for sure.
Oh, man. So since you've been on this wonderful interview tour promoting your marvelous work on these marvelous podcasts, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often?
I think maybe what's the most fun that readers do that is fun for me? What do I like best about what readers do? And I guess the thing that I've had the most fun hearing about from them, I have had readers send me, one sent me a picture. I don't remember if she was in Florida or where she was. My first book in the series is called The Mad Hatter's Son. It's a play on a name, and it also relates to the plot. But she was standing in front of a restaurant called the Mad Hatter's Restaurant. So she took a picture and she sent it to me, and that was really nice. And another one who lives in Colorado actually found a Mad Hatter ale and sent me a 6-pack. So I have readers send me pictures of them with one of my books, which is lovely. And I've had a couple people, one recently who said, I just love your books, and I'm really annoyed that you haven't been interviewed with Harlan Coben yet. And I was like, well, I don't think I'm quite there yet, but thank you. So I think you get a lot back from the people who like your books and want to connect with you. And that's a lot of fun.
Heck yeah, that's right. Fun on the bun, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. You need to find your way to get into Starbucks restaurant and be like, hey, it's time for me to really live up to the name now, even though they haven't given me free coffee yet.
Oh, they don't. No, they stole our name. That is actually my name. And people say, oh, are you related to the Coffee Bunch? And it's like, no, they just chose the name because they liked it, and I don't get free coffee. So kind of the way it goes.
Heck yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. So my goodness, heck, actually, before that question, fun question: has anyone ever ever actually been to a Starbucks before and they see your card and they'll be like, "Wait, are you serious?"
I've had people say, "How did you pick your pen name?" And it's like, well, I didn't pick it; I was born with it. Because I think they automatically assume, I mean, it's not a very common name. So I think they assume that I picked the name for the name recognition because of the Coffee Bunch. And it's like, no, I was born with it. So, and I, at the time I wrote the first book, my daughter, I had kept my married name after the divorce because of my daughter. She was young and she was finally grown and out on her own. And my sister said to me when I was working up to getting this published, she said, if you publish this book under his last name, I'll come out there and strangle you. And it was like, okay, then. So at that point, I went back to my maiden name, and it was a good decision. So,
She must have really hated the ex.
well, she didn't hate him as much as she just didn't want, she wanted me to take credit for it, as opposed to publishing it under his name. At least I think that was the point. I don't think she hated him, but I could be wrong.
It's like you ever call it. It's like, oh yeah, I hated his guts. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
sure
did you
did
really
too.
hate him? Yeah, that's true.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, the fun question we're loving to ask guests to sell their books even more, especially those of the wonderful sense of taste. If your wonderful book, the most recent one, The Woman He Used to Know, if that was a food, what would it be and why?
It would be a bear claw, I think, because it's sweet, but you always have a little regret after you finish eating it because you know it's going to take hours of exercise to get rid of it. And so the theme of the story to some extent is regrets for past behavior. And yet there's a sweet side to it too. So I guess maybe a bear claw.
There we go. It's happy calories, y'all. That's right, indeed. That's right,
Yes.
indeed.
Yes.
That's right, indeed. Might even be one of those Krispy Kreme bear claws, indeed. That's
Oh
right, indeed.
yeah. Yeah. Those are always good.
Oh yeah, that's right, indeed. It's just Krispy Kreme. That means you have to buy a dozen copies of all of our books, y'all. Let me stop.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're at 25 again, but you're in 2022 with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
There's a meme that I just love. It shows a chocolate cupcake with a candle in it, and it says, eat the cupcake, buy the shoes, take the trip, sleep with the guitar player. And I would add, and most of all, stop listening to the naysayers. So I think my advice to myself at 25 would be, don't spend so much time worrying about what other people think of what you're doing, what they may expect. Find the joy in what you do. And even then, that joy was in writing. And it's like, let it flow. Don't worry about people going, you're writing a book with that funny look on their face. So yeah, I think I would tell my younger self, be more relaxed. Go have a little more fun. Go do things that kind of scare you, so that when you get old and gray and you can't do those things, you're not going to think, darn, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. I think when we're 25, we don't think we're ever going to get old, and we certainly don't think we're ever going to die. And so I think we kind of have to be reminded that, we get one trip through this life, so make it count.
Oh, yeah, that's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. That's right. So the main version of that one is going to be a bear claw with a candle. That's right. That's right.
Yes, there you go.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So for those who need to get all the wonderful pastries via your books, what's the best way for folks to do so and keep up with all the wonderful things that you're doing, Helen?
They can check out my website, and you can contact me through it. It's Helen Starbuck, all one word, .com. And they can contact me, send me an email through the website. They can also sign up for my newsletter, which comes out about once a month unless there's something special happening. And that'll keep them up to breast. If they sign up for the newsletter, they'll be the first group of people to get the new information. So, to see new covers, to hear about new books. to hear about podcasts like this. So those are two really good ways. I'm also on Facebook, Helen Starbuck author, and Instagram at Helen Starbuck. So you can connect with me there as well if that's your choice of social media.
That's what I'm talking about indeed, folks. You heard that right, folks. If you love hearing the wonderful Helen, head over to her wonderful website, HelenStarbuck.com. Slide into her DMs on Instagram. Indeed, be like, hey, you're super special, awesome. Love your freaking books. Can't wait until book number 10, y'all. That's right, indeed. That'll really get her cooking there. She's like, oh, God, it just got 6. Like, come on, can I get to at least book 8?
Yeah. It's good to know. It's good to know that people are anxious. Keeps me writing, and it tells me that people enjoy what I'm writing. So there's a positive side to that. When's it coming out?
Thanks a bunch for sharing some of your time out of your day to listen to the Going North podcast. I would be really honored if you head over to the website goingnorthpodcast.com and share this episode with someone that you care about. And also, for bonus points, if you like, click on the shop tab on the website and grab some gear, advance others to advance yourself if you haven't already. Have a great rest of your day and keep advancing north to your greatness.